Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Not Your Therapist podcast. My name is Kelly.
And I am Brittany.
Today, we are super excited because we have a guest on today's episode.
Yay, guests! I feel like those are like my favorite episodes now, is when we have a guest.
I know. It's just so exciting because you don't have to just listen to our boring voices anymore. You get to listen to someone more exciting.
Yay! And then we get to ask them questions. Woo!
Woohoo! Honestly, though, I'm kind of a little worried about this episode.
Why is that?
This is like a special episode, I feel.
Yeah.
It's a little bit deep. We're going to be talking about addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And our friend Matt wrote in an amazing submission that we were able to kind of base our questions off of. We kept things out so that we could learn some stuff too during these questions. But I truly feel like this is going to be like a top podcast episode for a long time.
I really hope so. And I hope we do it justice.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Yes. So we're really excited. Like you said, our guest Matt, he is going to be talking about his whole journey, I guess, of growing up with addiction in his family and kind of what that entails, what that made him feel personally, and obviously how you can start to like redevelop relationships. And yeah, along those lines, we'll obviously have Matt talk about his own self for that.
Yeah. There's going to be like a lot going on in this episode.
Yeah.
But thank you, Matt, for opening up and sharing this part of you with us. We are very honored and appreciative. So welcome, Matt. Hi.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. No problem at all, guys. I'm, like I said to you before, I'm a little nervous, but I'm really excited as well. I can't wait to do this with you.
Yeah, we're very
Yay.
excited to have you. First of all, how are you doing, Matt? How have you been with all of this COVID-19 biz?
I've been good. I've been trying to look at it less as a negative and more of a positive in the sense that, you know, maybe a little bit of reworking business-wise and also a little bit of inner reflection, too, with the amount of downtime that I've had. You know, as much as it sucks and it's definitely a damper on everything that was happening that you had momentum on before, not much you can do about it. You're not the only one.
Exactly.
Instead of looking at this thing like this is never going to end or whatever, just look at the positives and do what you can to get yourself through it. So I've been all right. And also I've been looking at my girlfriend who's fighting the COVID war.
Yeah.
And just super inspiring to see that. So
She's an X-ray tech, which is amazing. I mean, she has to work in hospitals pretty much or clinics, but good for her. We love that.
yeah, it's great to see it and super inspiring and just really reminded me of how strong of a girl she is and how lucky I am to have her. So yeah.
Oh, that's
been great.
amazing.
Adorable.
Yeah, so cute.
Earn some
Thank you
extra
for
brownie
that.
points on the podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. She'll definitely be listening to
Check,
this.
check.
Round of applause. That was very good.
And cut.
Episode done. That was
yeah,
it.
that was it. Whole episode.
That is, as they said, the episode was going to be amazing, and that's where it's going to stay. So,
Yeah. You're off to a fantastic start.
Well, shall we jump into it?
yeah, let's do it.
Why don't you just, Matt, kind of just tell us about yourself, what you do, where you're from, what your vibe is.
Growing up, I really wanted to be a professional Formula One race car driver, but my parents didn't think that was the safest career option for me. So I settled for being a music producer and an audio engineer instead. So
Still super cool.
That's pretty rad, though.
Yeah.
I'd say it worked out. Born in Vancouver, raised in Coquitlam, super suburb area. Coquitlam's a cool area to grow up in. I always thought of it as the area that people who couldn't afford Vancouver came to and just kind of made it their own little Vancouver. So it was cool growing up. It kind of sucks now, but
Well, at least you had a good view of it for a while.
I got the best of it, and that's all that really matters. So.
Yeah.
So, like we said, this episode is based around addiction. So before we kind of go straight into that, Matt, do you want to tell us kind of what your family dynamic looked like growing up?
Family dynamic, it was good. I'd say we'd had a very open relationship. I mean, I come from a very loudmouth Italian family where
Classic.
if you're not being yelled at, there's something wrong. By no means did I grow up in a unloving family. It was very nurturing. My parents were extremely supportive growing up. My dad coached me in youth soccer, so naturally through that we had a bond. And my mom was very go with the flow and just kind of figure it out as on the way. When I had told her that I was going to make the safer career option to go into, at first it was radio broadcasting, she about teared up because before she got into working at a credit union, she wanted to go into radio broadcasting as well.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
But she was kind of talked out of it by her parents, and they both come from immigrant families, and you know her dad was that's not what ladies do.
Yeah.
You know, girls don't go into radio, right? So I mean, I had no fault to my grandpa. He was a great guy, but it's just their old school mentality, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Growing up as the youngest brother was tough at times. You constantly got picked on, and you constantly had to fight to get loved a little bit more, which is fine. It kind of turned me into the person that I am today, which is totally cool.
So who was it in your family that had struggled with addiction?
It was both of my older brothers. The first that I know of being my oldest brother, who is 4 years older than I am. All throughout high school, he was a really big weed smoker. I don't know. I mean, say what you want. Call it a gateway drug. Don't call it a gateway drug. People are going to do what they're going to do at the end of the day. I never really looked at it like that, though. So he was the first that I saw and knew of in my family with the addiction. And then a couple of years after that, we started to see similar tendencies in my older brother. It didn't pleasantly come to light. It was interesting.
Did they hide it for a while? Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, for a while they did. It was definitely hidden. Looking back at it now, I realized that there was a problem, and my parents realized that there was a problem as well. And when I think about it, I don't know whether that was my brothers being ashamed for what they were doing and not really having an outlet, or I don't know if that was my parents kind of hiding it from me.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I still can't quite put my finger on it.
Do you ever feel like that there was, in some ways, that you or your parents were kind of turning a blind eye or trying to lessen the
severity, I guess?
Lessen the severity?
Ooh, yeah, I do. But I don't think that was anyone's fault.
Right. And I was just going to say, I don't think that, especially, you know, as like a parent, you want the best for your kids and you want to believe that they're doing right, I guess, or that you as a parent have done right for them.
It was more of this thing just came up and we're doing our best to handle it with what we know. And I didn't know anything. To say there was a bit of a blind eye turn to it, I would say so.
How old were you when you found out that your brothers were struggling with addiction?
At first, I thought it was 2010, but thinking back at it, it was actually 2009. And that was, I woke up to my brother. He was like kissing me and telling me it was going to be okay and all this shit. And I looked at him, I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what's going on here? So 2009 was the first time that I'd ever heard of the term drug-induced psychosis.
Okay.
So he was high when he was doing that?
He was either high or he was suffering from the side effects of being high.
Right.
Okay.
We don't know. It was years ago at this point, right? So
yeah, well, it's got to be terrifying to experience something like that.
Oh yeah, it was so scary because I looked up to my brother in a way that like, man, I fucking adored him. Like he was the fucking man. And when I saw that, I didn't know what was happening. And I didn't know if maybe it was just like a mental breakdown that was happening.
Right.
Yeah.
There was no way of 17, 18-year-old me understanding what the hell was going on, right?
Yeah.
Could you kind of explain the best way that you can what drug-induced psychosis is? Because I'm not sure that I truly know
I would go spinning off on a tangent if I did that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shorten this for everybody.
Google it.
And I'm just going to Google it. Also known as stimulant psychosis, refers to any psychotic episode which has been caused by abuse of stimulants, an adverse reaction to prescription drugs, or excessive use of alcohol or drugs, which has directly triggered a psychotic reaction.
Wow. I'm surprised. Actually, I didn't even know that alcohol could be something that could induce psychosis.
I actually didn't either.
Is that just kind of they're reacting differently than they would both on drugs and sober? Is
Yeah.
that kind of a good way to look at it?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say so. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a phenomenon that happens. I would say when your body's missing that something, or when
okay.
it's coming off of that something. So
Gotcha.
typically when if somebody is going through recovery, they'll experience a lot of it because their brain is just fucking shell shocked, right?
So more so during absence or during recovery.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. I guess the next question is, what was their drug of choice?
Their drug of choice was crack. I think for a little bit there, it was heroin before it all just kind of turned into what we now know as fentanyl.
Right.
But yeah, I know that my older brother was mainly smoking crack. My oldest brother, man, he was doing anything he can get his hands on at the time. I never saw it though. Like I mean I can say it, right, but we know for a fact they were both smoking crack, so. Did
your two brothers hang out with each other, or did they have like a separate reason for like starting doing drugs?
They never hung out together when they did it. And I'd say they'd had separate reasonings as to why they did it.
Yeah.
Looking back on how it all kind of unfolded, I think my older brother slipped into it because he was trying to help my oldest brother out.
Oh, interesting.
But I wouldn't say that's how he started with it. I'd say that's how he kind of got more and more invested in it. To me, when I look at it, it just kind of seemed like he was carrying a lot of that burden as to why my oldest brother was doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'd say that they had separate reasonings for it. And when they'd come on and off the street, you'd kind of have like this grace period of like, holy shit, my brother's home. He's fucking dirty. Just came off the street. It would just always blow my mind that they would always run into one another whenever they were out doing whatever they were doing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did they live at home?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
They were living at home through it all. I shouldn't say through it all, through most of it. And then it kind of got to a boiling point where I looked at my parents and I was like, this is extremely fucking toxic.
Yeah.
You guys giving them a place to come crash at the end of all this, you're only enabling them, right? Like as hard as it is, you got to come to a point where it's like you either keep doing this or you got to send them on their way. And I don't know if this was a good thing for me at the time. I was super young. I shouldn't say super young. I was like 21, 22. But I kind of strongholded them a little bit. And I was like, if you don't kick them out, I'm fucking leaving.
Okay,
Yeah.
like an ultimatum.
Yeah, I kind of gave them that ultimatum. And looking back at it, like I still don't know whether that was a good or bad thing that I did. But I think it smartened them up a little bit, and I think it kind of brought a lot of things to their attention.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It can get super toxic, and when you're having to deal with somebody who's coming down, the abuse that you have to take from them, it is just super, super, super. It is so harmful and it is so hurtful for the one who's on the receiving end of it. Nobody knew why this whole thing started, and nobody could pinpoint the exact, reasoning, location, why this all happened. But, there comes a time where it's like, are you going to actually keep putting up with this bullshit, or are you just going to, say goodbye to it?
It'd be so hard, to make that decision. It's your child, but also it's so exhausting, and knowing that you're not necessarily helping the situation get any better. Yeah.
Totally. There's a common theme of this whole interview that I'll keep saying, that I don't fault my parents for it.
Yeah.
They didn't.
No.
They didn't know how to handle that situation. And if your kid comes to you in the middle of the night and he's, cracked out and he's looking for a place to crash, your instincts as a parent is to protect them, right?
Of course. Yeah. That's what I would assume any parent would most likely do.
Right. I do not blame my parents one bit for it. Do I wish that it would have ended a lot sooner and that they would have, maybe gave him the boot a lot sooner? Fuck yeah, I do. Sure I do. But, like I said before, they were just going with what they knew. So.
Mm-hmm. And would that have changed things at a faster pace? You don't know either, right?
No,
yeah.
you never know.
Maybe giving them that extra push at that time would have pushed them in a complete opposite direction too. So
yeah,
it's so hard to say.
It could have, but I don't think it would have.
Okay.
for the reasoning that an addict isn't going to change their mind because they've lost everything. An addict is going to change their mind about, the lifestyle that they're in because of a decision that they're going to make. Whether or not, I've lost everything is a factor to that is a completely different discussion, but it's a realization that they have to come to. So I don't think that getting them out of the house quicker would have made the process go by quicker as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And adding on to that too, it's not something that you just kind of walk into. You go into a recovery home and you're fine. Like, you got to be willing to make a lifestyle choice of like, I cannot drink anymore. I cannot smoke crack anymore. I can't hang around, people that cause these feelings anymore, right? Like, it's a big fucking deal.
Yeah, there's a lot that needs to change.
Right. Right.
My question for you then is, like, their addiction started, or you found out about their addictions around the time that most kids start to experiment with alcohol and things like that. Did their addictions change your outlook on partying or your experimentation with drinking? And
admittedly so. I smoked my fair share of weed in high school, as any kid does. I mean, who doesn't want to hang out with their friend and get absolutely fucking blitzed in an afternoon, right? Just lay on the couch and play video games all afternoon. But for some reason, drugs had never, ever, like, hard drugs had never done it for me. I actually haven't done anything past weed. And to this day, smoking weed doesn't even do anything for me. I will be the first to admit that I drink, and I will gladly crack a beer at any given moment, just because I like the social drink. Going down into the addiction side of things and whether or not that changed my view on it, I don't think so. I never saw it in a way that was, well, if I do this, I'm going to end up like them. I never ever saw that.
That's really good. That was going to be one of my questions, because, like, it's hard to assume what you would feel in that situation, knowing that, like, both of your brothers got into drugs, but in, like, totally separate ways.
Right.
And wondering, like, oh, is that something that's going to happen to me now? Like, it's great that you were able to keep that separate from your own life and know, like, I can still have fun and not, like, be worried that that's what's going to happen to me.
I actually remember the moment that I got internally turned off from cocaine. I've never done it before, but we were at a party in high school and my buddy just came back from the bathroom. He did a bunch of lines and I was like, what's it like? Like, we're all in high school. I'm like, what's it like? And he's like, completely sobered me up. And I was like,
well, that's dumb.
Why would I want to be sober right now?
I just worked so hard to get drunk. I'm not going to sober up.
I am having the time of my life, fucking tanked. I don't need to be sober right now.
Yeah.
So, I remember when he said that to me, and I thought it was the most counterintuitive thing. Like, it's just the stupidest thing. I remember with ecstasy as well. They'd pop E, and the next morning they'd be waking up with sore backs, and they'd be all depressed. I was like, my back's already fucked. I was born with a fucked up back. I don't need any more issues. And I was like, I come from an emotionally, like, if emotions aren't running rampant in an Italian household, there's something wrong.
Right.
So, like, I don't need to be depressed. Like, I don't need that shit at all, because someone's going to come down hard and I'm going to get fucking rained on. So I don't need that shit right now.
That's actually like a great way to look at it, though.
Yeah. It wasn't even like, man, you're missing out on being high. It was like, I just don't want to suffer the repercussions of doing this shit. You know?
And not in terms of addiction, just like, dude, I don't want to wake up feeling like ass.
Totally. You feel so stupid as it is waking up after a night of drinking.
Yeah.
I don't need that extra shit.
Yeah, I don't need to add on anything to that. Hangovers are the worst.
Totally.
I guess as you began to learn more and more about the extent of their addictions, you mentioned that, like, you and one or both of your brothers were quite close, or that you looked up to them. How did your opinions of them change once this all started to come out?
Oh, man. I'd be lying to you if I said anything else. And there's a part of me that still feels that I'm really guilty for thinking this way. But I definitely felt that they were lesser, and I just, like, couldn't get behind that. When I look back at it, there could have been more supportive ways that I could have helped my brothers out. But I just went into shutdown mode, and it was kind of I just kind of threw up a big middle finger to them.
Yeah.
it wasn't after the first or second time of recovery. I didn't understand the process. So the night that we all found out that he had a cocaine addiction, we instantly, like almost immediately, started looking for places to get him treatment. And it was a recovery home. At first, I was like, okay, my brother's got an addiction problem, but it's going to be cool. He's going to go into this recovery home, and everything's going to be better, and I'm going to have my brother back, and I'm going to hang with him, and it's going to be so fucking good again, and it's all going to be cool. He went into this addiction home. For 9 months, you're not allowed to have any contact with them.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
That was hard, I, at the time, really wanted to call my brother and just be like, hey, man, like, how's it all going? How you hanging in? But you couldn't do that. After 9 months, he came out, and he reminded me of what my brother used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was like, man, like, this is it. Like, fuck, he's back. This is so great. And then it kind of happened again where he fell off, got into a recovery home, and he tried it again. What I learned from him going into recovery homes was that he actually wasn't going in there to try and get help. He was going in there to find out how to get more money to get more drugs.
Oh, wow.
Which was fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And when I found that out, that is when the big middle finger came up.
Yeah.
It was like, fuck you, man. That was tough. That was hard.
It's almost like, your family members are going through these things over and over and over again, and you're continuously having to like grieve the loss of them while also hoping for a change.
It was crazy because my oldest brother was a man when he was 16 years old. Like, he was a fucking man. He had this rad Mazda RX-7 he used to drive around. The girls he would introduce me to were like just stunners.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, straight up. I really admired him, and like, even athletically, I'd look at my brother and I'd be like, man, like, that's the kind of soccer player I want to be, like, fucking hardworking. He was such a good athlete. What I kind of noticed and what kind of made me realize there was no way that I was going to be able to help him. I started seeing this decline in maturity
Mm-hmm.
where it was literally like a full-grown man turning into a kid again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the hardest thing for me because of how much I loved him, and I shouldn't say loved, because I still love my brother, but because of how much I looked up to him as a kid, that was the most difficult thing for me to wrap my head around. How can I literally be witnessing somebody turn into a kid when I've known him as a fucking full-grown man my entire life?
Yeah.
It was strange. It was really weird, and I think that's where my feelings of, yeah, you are a lesser being for being an addict kind of came up. And there is a part of me that still feels guilty for thinking that way, because at the end of the day, we're all people, no matter what shit we're going through, right? So
Yeah. I mean, I don't blame you for feeling that way, because I can imagine it's easy to be disappointed in something that you saw so much hope for, seeing that all being like taken away because of their own choices. Like, I definitely understand that. Did your parents still give them as much attention and time as they did like when they weren't struggling with addiction?
I don't know, and I've said this to my mom and my dad on multiple occasions. I don't know if I don't understand the love that they could give to their kids even as addicts, because I don't have a kid myself, but the amount of like unconditional love that my parents gave both of my brothers is out of this fucking world. It is insane to see how persistent they were in their recovery and the roles that they've played, especially my older brother's recovery. My oldest brother, he just got into a home, but as we all know, they could leave at any point, right? Like, they're not,
Yeah.
like, they don't have to stay. I can't give enough credit to my parents for doing what they've done. I don't tell them that enough. That's for goddamn sure. So, Mom and Dad, if you're listening, you've done an incredible job.
And do you think that plays a very important role in people's recovery, having support?
Yeah, it does. My older brother, he's kind of struggled a bit with going in and out of recovery homes as well. It was 3 months. He's been clean for a year now, which is amazing.
That's amazing.
When he first got in, he would try to call me, and I was like, no. It was almost the same feelings that I felt for my other brother. But my parents would always answer the call, and I'd always get annoyed as to and wonder why they were answering the call. And one day it just kind of clicked, and I think it was about 6 months into the stint that he's done. And it wouldn't have clicked if Amanda didn't say, you know, maybe you should just try talking to him. Because I was in a phase, and arguably still am in a phase of like, I don't really want to talk to anybody about anything. Like I don't care. I don't care about what your problems are. I'm going through my own shit. Extremely selfish of me, but
fair enough. I can if your brain is so overwhelmed with what you have going on, I think that other people's you can't take on anymore. Yeah. Whether it's your own problems or other people's problems too. It's just like, please let me just chill with my problems for a second, because I'm gonna get overwhelmed.
Yeah. Even just picking up his phone call and just like chat with him, like, hey, how was your day? It gives him a chance to release a lot of shit that he's been thinking about during the day. The first time that I did that, it was a great conversation that I had with him. It would help him out if I can be there as much as I possibly can. If I can't take a call, I can't take a call.
Yeah.
And he's just gotta understand and respect that. But if I actually have time, I'd be doing him a disservice if I totally just shut him off and said, fuck you.
Right.
Because of some bitter shit that I'm feeling right now. So,
yeah,
you know, I got to put that shit aside and just be there for my brother right now. Because as much as we didn't see eye to eye, and maybe still don't see eye to eye to this day, at the end of the day, he's my brother, and I got to be there for him, right?
In as much of a way as you feel comfortable or you can possibly give, right?
Yeah,
like,
and slowly I feel like conversations have been getting a lot better. At first, it was like, hey, how you doing? Good? Okay, I got to go. Bye. And I just kind of make a mental excuse as to why I had to leave. As things progress and as time goes on, it's more like, okay, well, 5-minute conversation turns into a 10-minute conversation, and a 10-minute conversation turns into a 15-minute, and it just kind of builds, which is
baby
good.
Steps.
Because it's all in trying to rebuild a relationship that was never there in the first place, right?
Yeah,
so,
true.
Exactly.
Another, just to kind of cycle back to my oldest brother, there is a 10-year gap between like cousin generations, if you will. My cousins now are 40 and 50 years old. So the family kind of went through this period of like, well, there's no kids, there's no cousins, and they all just kind of hung out together. So when my oldest brother was born, naturally everybody just gravitated towards that, and they fucking threw the world at him, right? Growing up, he had jobs that were related to what they were doing. And I think an added thing to the resentment that I was feeling was that no matter how much he kept falling back, people would just be there to support what seemed like support what he was doing. And they'd always be like, oh, you know, well, he's got a job and I got him a job. And it's like, at what point are you going to make him accountable for all of his shit?
Yeah.
And at what point are you going to stop fucking babying him? And at what fucking point is he just going to learn how to fucking deal with this shit on his own? Because you constantly giving him jobs, you constantly being there to pick him up, is not doing him any fucking good. That was an added layer of fuck you. So I'd see all these handouts that he was getting, and I'd feel this extra layer of resentment and fuck you to him.
Yeah, did you feel the same way towards your family for, you know, like focusing more on your brothers, even though they weren't doing anything that was like good and healthy for them?
Yeah, I did. Never my parents, though.
Yeah. But like extended family members?
Extended family, fuck yeah. And looking back, I get it. I think I totally understand. He was the first kid in 10 years. Like, I get it.
Were they doing those same things for you? Like putting in the effort for
No.
Just the just the brothers?
No. I'm sure they'd argue it, but no.
Yeah. Almost like, oh, we look at Matt and he's doing fine, so we don't need to like pay attention and like do the extra work to help him out or anything.
You know, when attention's being focused in an area that is just that it just seems like it's a never-ending black hole. As somebody who's attached to it, you're looking at it and you're like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing this?
Kind of to close out this part 1 episode, I kind of have like a statement, and I'd like to know your stance on said statement. And that statement is, addiction is a disease. And is that something that you believe in, or...
Yeah, I do. Addiction is a disease, and you can't argue otherwise. I was at a Al-Anon meeting, like for families.
Mm-hmm.
I should go to more of them. It's just good to be surrounded by people that are in the same boat, and you're kind of just you're surrounded by support there, basically. And they played this video. I'd be totally bullshitting if I went off on a tangent on how they described it. It really brought to light why it's an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And they broke down it's like facts. It's factual as to why addiction is a disease. Sorry.
And that obviously then has evolved as you begin to learn more and more about it.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's a good time to wrap up part 1 of this addiction episode. We have more to cover next week.
Yeah, so we will continue on this topic in the next episode with Matt. Matt will obviously still be here in the next episode. Thank you so much for doing this, Matt. We're so excited to have you for a part 2.
No worries. Thanks for having me along, guys. This has been great.
Yeah, and in all of our episodes, we end it by saying goodbye in a different language. We have said ciao before, but since you and your family are super Italian, we thought that it would be a good idea to end this episode by also saying ciao. And we'll be doing our therapy for the week in
part 2.
Until then,
ciao.